The film then returns to a familiar kingdom set in the middle of a field. Inside the castle, Le Fou, going back to names, I was thinking about Le Fou, and I was thinking, well, you know what, maybe Le Fou is also his last name. So I looked through, and I tried to find a few good names that I thought would work well with the character, and also have some meaning to his name that would be poignant. So I thought, okay, we got Ami, or Ames, friend, Andre, which means manly, or Lowell, which means beloved. So for the sake of this, I'm probably going to be calling him Le Fou most of the time, so you know. But I thought Andre sounds the best, Andre Le Fou. But tell me what you think. And maybe you know some other French male names that would work well with Le Fou. Monsieur Dark and a few other townsfolk are requested to be seen by the king. The king lets them in, and they enter the grand hall where Sleeping Beauty was set. So Sleeping Beauty, I thought I needed another monarch for this story, and I thought, why not? There's so many kingdoms set in France in the Disney universe, and we know that a lot of these kingdoms exist in the same universe. Like we see Rapunzel show up at, was it Elsa's coming out ceremony or something like that. We see her in Frozen. So I thought, okay, well, why don't we do a little bit of fan service, because this is a sequel to a very old movie. So I thought, why not? So Sleeping Beauty is set 300 years before Beauty and the Beast. I looked into it a little bit. And if you look into Beauty and the Beast has like guns, or they're not present in Sleeping Beauty. And if you look at the time periods when they were written, so this isn't the same court as the original Sleeping Beauty, but the setting is basically the same. I also thought it would be good to include Sleeping Beauty because I thought, well, they also enjoy supernatural elements. I know most Disney films enjoy supernatural elements, but you'll see later on the reason why I decided to include them. The room is packed with members of the court, and Le Fou, for a moment, thinks he sees the triplets from the town, but then they disappear as the king greets them, and his attention is directed towards the king. The king is introduced as King Auroran. I thought this was fitting. I thought Auroran was a fitting name, considering that his ancestor would be Princess Aurora, and it would help just link this movie and Sleeping Beauty together. The townfolk explain what happened at the castle. The king asks his consul if he knows the lord or monarch of the castle to which they are referring. The consul reviews a book that suggests, based on location and description, this is the old Bête castle. So I'm throwing out words because we weren't given names. I'm throwing out names because we weren't given names. And because names are so important again in Beauty and the Beast, as I explained before, I made a decision and just called it Castle Bête. And they're the Bête family, they're the Bête monarchy. And of course, Bête means the beast in French. So it's a nice sounding name, just like every other French name, but I figured it works well for the plot. And really, so what if it's like so on the nose? Lumiere, light, candle, Cogsworth. So, Mrs. Potts. It doesn't matter, it's a Disney film. I thought also it might work too, because the castle, as we've seen in the original Beauty and the Beast, it's like the surrounding area is quite menacing with like wolves running around right up to the castle gates. Anyways, the consul then says, "We have not heard from them for some time. Last reports come from nearly 10 years ago. One of our escorts tried to make contact and found the castle locked and in disarray. The last recorded surviving member is Prince Adam. His parents had died when he was but a child." The king suggests that perhaps bandits have taken over the castle, but Monsieur Dark explains that as a man who is an expert in lunacy, he can testify to the validity of the townsfolk's claims. Remember, he was in charge of the insane asylum in Beauty and the Beast. Furniture attacked the mob, and a great and powerful beast slew their local hero, Gaston. The king gets up from his throne with a troubled look on his face. He walks over to a display case where a dragon's tooth and claw are kept alongside a familiar sword, shield, and oddly enough, a sewing wheel. My family is not... let's make Sean Connery. Because he was so good in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, okay? Sean Connery is Prince Aurorn. My family is not unfamiliar with the supernatural, magical, and extraordinary. He turns back to the townsfolk. I have not been to your side of the country in a long time. I will go with a contingent of soldiers, and we will see what we can make of these possessed furnishings. A monstrous beast. He turns his head to his game warden, Daguerre. So this is an original character that I created. His name means lost or stray, and you'll see why I gave him that name. Physically, Daguerre is very similar to Gaston. Like big, like think how he's just Gaston, but more Gaston. Like he's bigger, prettier, shittier in attitude. Kind of like how Niles is just an ultra form of Frasier, you know? Daguerre, you knew Gaston well, yes? Yes, my lord. Maybe I'll give him Solid Snake's. Yes, my lord. He looks at the saddened townsfolk who are clearly hanging on his every word, since he knew their hero. Daguerre sighs. He was a good man, an excellent hunter, terrible loss. Good then. You shall join us. As my head game warden, your expertise will likely be needed against this beast. The film returns to Adam and Belle, who are on a balcony overlooking the castle garden. Adam is reviewing papers and laments that the old mine below the castle shows signs of still having precious gems and gold. But it has long since been abandoned after a collapse. It would take considerable manpower and money to reopen it. Additionally, the food stores are quickly depleting now that there is just one mouth to feed. Adam is going over his financial woes. Belle spies Mrs. Potts wheeling Gaston in an old wheelchair into the garden. Adam takes notice as well and explains that Gaston's injuries are healing, but slowly. He's almost mobile again. Perhaps we can return him to the village? Belle is unconvinced. She states that they are in the middle of winter. He would not be able to make the trek himself on foot, and we have no carriages or horses to take him, with Father and Philippe out trying to sell his inventions. I figured for Maurice, they're in financial woes. Obviously Maurice has inventions, tries to sell them, and that's where he is. Belle turns to Adam and sees him frustrated with his head in his hands. What kind of prince am I, when I can't even look after my own court? I don't know what I'm doing. Belle approaches him and holds him close to her. Don't be so hard on yourself. You never had a chance to learn, what with how quickly your parents passed. As Belle and Adam talk, the film moves to Gaston, who is approached by Chip, who is holding his bow and arrows. Chip offers him the bow, saying, now that your arms are better, I thought you might like to practice while you're outside. He directs his attention to the side of the castle. I set up a target for you. Gaston sees the target, then looks up at Belle. He sees her looking at him and is quick to take the bow. Ah, my bow! Give me that, boy, watch this! He goes to pull back on the string, and a pain in his shoulder causes him to misfire, and the arrow falls short. I figured it would just be like right at his feet. He looks up again and sees Belle is no longer watching, but holding Adam. Gaston touches his pocket softly, and in a close-up we see the same silk handkerchief poking out. Don't worry, Monsieur Gaston, I cannot pull back the bow either. I'm sure you'll get your strength back soon enough, Chip says and recovers the bow. Gaston gets more frustrated. Give me the arrow, boy! Chip hands it to him. Don't strain yourself, he warns. Gaston sets the arrow again and uses his teeth to pull back on the bow and strikes the target bullseye. Chip is impressed and commends him as he runs over to the target. Gaston follows behind him in the wheelchair. It's not all about strength. Out in the field there are many ways to overcome a challenge. He looks up again at the balcony but sees that Belle is no longer there. Or solve a problem. I feel like Patrick Warburton should have been Gaston. Oh, solve a problem.
Oh yeah, it's all coming together.
The three of them start singing a song about how much easier it was when they were young, and how hard it is now. Parts of the song are sung by the servants of the castle, watching all three characters from different parts of the castle. Adam sings about how his parents looked after him when he was young, and there would be flashbacks, and this would be obviously the first time we get to see his family and see really how young his parents were. Gaston sings about how easy it was when he and LeFou just hunted and drank and were merry. Belle sings about her father when her mother was still around, and how so much easier it was for him. The song then changes key, and she then reminisces about how he put his inventing aside and moved to take care of Belle as a child. How hard it was for him to make money and look after her. I get the impression that Maurice probably is pretty good at a lot of things, so he probably did manual labor for a while, but inventing is really his raison d'etre. She ends her part of the song singing, "Defeating the beast is just another bother when you are a man becoming a father." The servants sing about Adam, saying defeating the beast is just one thing, but you must be a man to be a king. And then Chip ends the song as he watches Gaston slowly wheel back into the castle, looking defeated. I guess defeating the beast is not enough, though. You have to be a man to be a hero. The story then returns back to the townsfolk after they saw King Auroran. They are leaving the castle. They are chatting about Auroran's champion. So I picture them kind of in the castle town, like the town surrounding the castle. They are chatting about Auroran's champion, Daguerre. LeFou is clearly saddened. One of the townsfolk notices and asks him what is wrong. LeFou just says he hopes Auroran's men will be enough. They start complimenting Daguerre, saying he seems very competent. At this point, they run into Maurice, who is peddling his wares in town. They start chatting him up and poking fun at him a bit. They apologize about Belle, who they assume is dead, and they apologize for insulting him and not believing him about the beast. Maurice plays along. They offer to escort him back to the village. While camping, LeFou and Maurice are still awake and are sharing a drink. LeFou mentions that you must really miss Belle, Maurice. Sorry for your loss. Maurice, not sure what to say, sees LeFou is sad and says, "My condolences about Monsieur Gaston. He was... Maurice struggles to come up with something nice to say about him. He was a very handsome man. LeFou agrees. Yeah, he was. A bit rough around the edges, but very handsome, very popular. And it's his mustache shakes as he says this shit. Wasn't always like that, you know. He used to look more like me, to be honest. LeFou is reminiscing. Flashbacks of when they were kids appear. A young Gaston appears with a young LeFou. LeFou just looks like a smaller version of himself, probably. He had to grow into his nose. While Gaston looks much different. His nose is too big and his chin is weak, so obviously he had to grow into his chin, kind of like Bruce Campbell. And his dark hair is messy. We used to play together in the woods all the time. When we got a bit older, we would hunt with bows and arrows. He let me borrow his bow too. My, that doesn't sound like Gaston at all. Excuse me. My apologies, I did not know him well. Everything kind of changed after that one rainy night, LeFou says, with a swig of his drink, and starts to pass out. When he let that woman in his parents' home, who offered him a flower. What? Maurice says. But LeFou falls asleep. A flashback of Prince Adam explaining his curse to Maurice is shown. A woman came to my door and offered me a rose for shelter. The next scene shows Gaston looking at his green dandelion in his room. He has a flashback of himself as a child with LeFou. They are having breakfast for dinner. LeFou asks, "How many eggs do we need?" And Gaston says, "Good question." Then there's a knock at the door. His younger self creeps towards the door. LeFou says that couldn't be her parents. They're not due back till tomorrow. Gaston snaps out of his memory after a second knocking and then hides the dandelion in the drawer in his room as Chip comes in with breakfast. He is struggling to hold the tray because of how much food is on it. Here is your breakfast, Monsieur Gaston. 4 scrambled eggs, 4 hard-boiled eggs, 4 soft-boiled eggs, 4 poached eggs, 4 eggs over easy, 4 deviled eggs. Chip loses his footing and Gaston grabs the tray before he drops them.
Careful, boy!
Sorry, I'm not very strong and that's a lot of food. Gaston looks at him as he rubs his sore arms. He hears his stomach grumble.
Have you not eaten?
Not yet. I usually don't eat breakfast. Gaston looks at him, shocked.
Well,
Gaston grabs the plate of scrambled eggs.
Here, if you want to get strong, you need your breakfast.
Chip thanks him, and as they eat, Chip asks some questions. Did these eggs make you big?
Yes.
So you were smaller?
We all were smaller.
But as small as me?
Maybe smaller.
How many eggs do you eat every day?
5 dozen.
How many is that?
60.
You must have a lot of chickens.
And hens.
Did this put hair on your chest?
Yes.
Will it put hair on my chest?
Someday.
Are you a hunter?
Yes.
Are you a soldier?
Sometimes.
Are you rich?
No.
Are you poor?
No.
Then what are you?
Slightly annoyed.
What's your first name?
Florent.
So, I had to think of what would be a good first name for Gaston. And I thought, since Gaston is an analog basically for Prince Adam. Like, they're very similar. Like, they're like reflections of each other. 2 sides of the same coin. And considering that Adam's name means man of the red earth, I thought it may be fitting to give Gaston a name that also has like earthy connotations. And also it's a funny name to have. So Florent means like flowering in French. Florent Gaston. What does it mean?
What does Chip mean?
Does your name mean flowers?
Does your name mean fries?
If your name means flowers, why do you have a weed?
None of your business.
The scene continues with Chip asking questions and shows that Mrs. Potts is watching them. Lumiere shows up and speaks with Mrs. Potts as she closes the door. He exclaims that the boy is spending a lot of time with that scoundrel. Potts scoffs and says Chip has never been more helpful around the castle. So he's curious about Monsieur Gaston. Learning how to hunt and provide could be useful. A door slams open, and they can hear Adam and Belle arguing. Mrs. Potts concludes as they look over the railing and watch them, and he may need those skills soon enough. The scene then focuses on Adam and Belle. They are yelling at each other about what to do with the castle. Belle tells him, "You have to make a decision. You can't expect them to stay here forever."
Then tell me what to do.
I don't know, but complaining about it is not going to help things. I'm the king of this castle. I can complain if I want. Fine then, my king. Complain all you want. But you will soon find this castle very empty and yourself very alone with no one to hear your complaints. I'm sorry that I don't have a voice for Belle. Or really a voice for Adam. Like, you only hear him, like, say, like, one thing. Belle?
Belle.
For all we know, he sounds like a surfer dude from Point Break. So, he's my voice. And so is Belle. So Adam and Belle both storm off in opposite directions. The scene follows Belle as she climbs the staircase. Lumiere and Mrs. Potts pretend that they were not eavesdropping, like dusting things. She then hears Gaston talking to Chip. She peeks in at them.
They are good, right?
What are these called again?
Deviled eggs. They are very easy to prepare, and they make you big and strong.
Can you show me? Gaston then hears Belle at the door and sees her. She quickly disappears.
Sure. Let us go to the kitchen.
Gaston and Chip emerge from his room. Gaston pretends to be surprised to see Belle there.
Oh, Belle! We were just about to go into the kitchen to make some more eggs. Would you care for some?
Belle thanks him but declines. Suit yourself, Gaston says, trying to maintain composure, and walks off with Chip passing Cogsworth as he approaches the group. Are we seriously letting that rogue have full access to the castle? Cogsworth asks Belle once Gaston is out of earshot. She declines. Not full access, but he is acting more civilly, and besides, Chip has taken a shine towards him. Perhaps it is good for both of them. Cogsworth scoffs in doubt.
Anyways, madam, his lordship would like to emphasize his apologies for his outburst, and he is requesting your company for breakfast.
I'm sorry if this is not Cogsworth's voice. I have no idea. It took me 6 months to write this, so I don't know. Belle is not impressed. Tell the prince I don't accept apologies given through others. And she eyes Gaston and Chip heading toward the kitchens. And, madam? And I'm making my own breakfast. And I shall have it in my private quarters today alone. Cogsworth is visibly nervous to share this information with Prince Adam and leaves. The scene moves to King Auroran as he travels to Castle La Bête. The head horseman announces that they are nearly there. He asks Daguerre about Gaston. Daguerre explains that he was born into the noble house of Gaston, but whatever wealth they had was squandered before his birth. He was basically a commoner. He was nobility in name and name alone. Thankfully, he exemplified himself as a soldier and gamesman. We met on the battlefield a few times as allies. The king tells him that knowing as much about Gaston is imperative as it will give us insight into how strong the beast is. Daguerre thinks on it. He then recalls a time when he and Gaston were charged with the protection of a young prince during a visit to a local city. 2 snipers shot arrows at the prince, and Gaston was able to shoot the arrows out of the sky with his own arrows. The king exclaims, "That's impressive!" Daguerre scoffs and knocks 3 arrows into his bow. "If I may, your liege." The king waves his hand. Daguerre then shoots the arrows into the sky, and Daguerre then proceeds to shoot all the arrows out of the sky before they hit the ground. "Yes, it was impressive, my liege, at the time." Alright, as you can see, time has changed again. I finished recording these things and I'm now putting them together. I think we're going to stop here for now. This is a multi-part series. I think there's going to be like maybe 4 or 5 parts, all around the same length, about 20 minutes. I hope you're enjoying it, and we'll catch you next time, and we'll see what happens next, Gaston. Thanks. Bye now.